Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating mystery. How exactly did a fractured, resource-poor mountain territory become one of the most stable, powerful, global powerhouses on the map? We're talking, of course, about Switzerland, a country that literally defies almost every single historical rule of nation-building. So let's unpack this massive paradox. By all conventional logic, a landlocked, totally fractured mountain region really shouldn't be as incredibly wealthy and successful as Switzerland is today. I mean, how did they pull it off? We're going to contrast their severe geographic limitations with their extraordinary global success, tracing the whole journey from ancient tribes all the way to modern prosperity. You know, most traditional nation-states are built on a pretty straightforward foundation, right? One shared language, a single ethnic identity, and easily navigatable geography. Well, Switzerland has absolutely none of these. They juggle 4 distinct official languages. Their political power is fractured across 26 highly independent sovereign cantons, and their terrain, it's completely dominated by the treacherous, impassable Alps. Plus, no ocean access whatsoever. By all accounts, this is a perfect recipe for a deeply unstable region. Yet, despite these seemingly insurmountable divisions, Switzerland astonishingly ranks number 2 globally in the Human Development Index, number 2 in the entire world. This incredibly high metric of wealth, health, and education really begs the question, how on earth do they pull this off when history suggests they should have torn themselves apart centuries ago? To really understand the depth of this pluralism, just look at how divided they could be. German speakers make up a 62% majority, followed by French at 23%, Italian at 8%, and the ancient Romansh language at just 0.5%. In many other parts of the world, let's be honest, these linguistic borders would be actual militarized national borders. But here, they're just neighbors. The secret to all of this lies in a concept known as a Willensnation, a nation of volition. This essentially means the Swiss aren't bound by a single ethnicity, language, or religion. Instead, they actively, consciously choose to be a nation together. Their cohesion is entirely rooted in shared political values, like federalism and direct democracy. They're a nation simply because they will themselves to be one. It's a really powerful idea. Moving on to our first section, what is in a name? Unlocking the ancient roots of modern symbols. You've probably typed a Swiss web address at some point and wondered, why is their domain .ch? Or why the Swiss franc is abbreviated to CHF on global markets? Well, it actually stems from their ancient Latin name, Confederatio Helvetica. You see, picking German, French, or Italian for national symbols would have definitely shown favoritism, so they gradually adopted this neutral, ancient Latin term just to keep the peace. Pretty clever, right? And that famous word Helvetica, which you probably know best as a super popular font, actually originates from a fierce Iron Age tribe. The Helvetii were a prominent Gaulish tribe living right on the Swiss plateau long before the Romans ever showed up. Today, their ancient legacy is literally stamped on every single Swiss coin. Next up, the ancient Alpine tribes, a chaotic crucible of cultures. So let's rewind the clock to 58 BC. The Helvetii were facing intense pressure from other tribes, so they packed up the whole shebang and mass migrated west looking for better opportunities. But unfortunately for them, they ran right into Julius Caesar. After decisively defeating them at the Battle of Bibracte, Caesar didn't actually destroy them. Instead, he essentially played bouncer. He forced the surviving Helvetii to turn around and march right back to the Alps to act as a buffer state. They tried to leave, but history literally forced them into a U-turn back to the mountains. Now, those French and German cultural divides you see in modern Switzerland, they were literally forged in the chaos of the Dark Ages. After the Romans fully conquered the Alps around 15 BC, their empire eventually weakened. This allowed Germanic tribes like the Alemanni to sweep in, bringing the roots of the German language. Meanwhile, the Burgundians settled in the west, bringing early French. By the 6th century, it was all absorbed into the Frankish Empire, and the cultural fault lines that still define the region today were pretty much set in stone. Which brings us to our next section, Forging the Old Confederacy, the Radical Alliances of the Middle Ages. The Federal Charter of 1291 is essentially the birth certificate of the Swiss identity. It marks this dramatic, defiant moment when rural mountain communes swore a sacred oath to manage their interests together. You see, to survive against powerful royal houses like the Habsburgs and to protect their absolutely vital mountain trade routes, they realized they simply had to unite. It was a matter of survival. These three original rural cantons, Uri, Schwetz, and Unterwalden, really started it all. They formed a defensive alliance that would slowly, over time, grow into the modern nation we know today. And what's absolutely fascinating here is that the middle canton, Schwetz, eventually lent its name and its iconic cross-bearing coat of arms to the entire country. The English name Switzerland stems entirely from this single, defiant mountain territory. Now, this rise wasn't exactly an overnight success. It was a slow, deliberate accumulation of power. From that initial alliance in 1291, they expanded to an 8-state confederation, bringing in powerful, wealthy city-states like Zurich and Bern. By 1499, after a massive victory in the Swabian War, they won de facto independence from the Holy Roman Empire. And finally, in 1648, the Peace of Westphalia formally recognized their full sovereignty and their trademark neutrality on the global stage. Moving right along, chaos to modern neutrality. How external threats forged a stable democracy. We really have to remember that this bond was nearly broken from the inside. The religious Reformation in the 16th century sparked intense, bloody intercantonal conflicts. It violently pitted Catholic cantons against newly Protestant ones in multiple internal wars. The fact that the Confederacy didn't permanently shatter during this severe religious turmoil is just a massive testament to their underlying commitment to mutual self-preservation. They stuck together when most would have completely fallen apart. But the real structural test came from the outside. In 1798, revolutionary France invaded and forced the Swiss into a highly centralized state called the Helvetic Republic. Well, the fiercely independent Swiss absolutely hated it, and they rebelled so constantly that by 1803, Napoleon himself basically threw his hands up and reinstated a decentralized confederation. Honestly, it's pretty ironic. It took a French invasion to make the Swiss truly realize just how vital their localized, decentralized roots were. Everything finally culminated in the year 1848. Following a brief internal civil war between liberal and conservative factions, the Swiss realized they desperately needed a permanent, balanced structure. So they adopted a brand new constitution. And that document established the incredibly resilient modern federal system we still see today. To keep all 26 diverse, multilingual cantons happy, they essentially engineered a highly decentralized democracy. They shared executive power among a council rather than a single powerful president, implemented a strict separation of powers, and built a completely neutral federal city in Bern. It's literally a political system custom designed from the ground up to prevent any single language group or faction from ever dominating the others. Their unofficial Latin motto, unus pro omnibus, omnes per uno, or one for all for one, perfectly captures the emotional core of this Williams nation. It's that unifying sentiment that allowed an unlikely collection of mountain valleys to survive centuries of European warfare, intense religious strife, and constantly shifting empires. So what's the reward for all that historical resilience? Well, that long-fought political stability directly translates into modern, jaw-dropping prosperity. With an estimated 2026 GDP per capita exceeding $126,000, the average Swiss citizen is literally among the absolute richest on Earth. They completely transformed their harsh, landlocked geography into a formidable fortress of economic competitiveness and innovation. Furthermore, because they haven't actually fought an international war since 1815, this deeply neutral nation became the ultimate trusted host for the rest of the world. Think about it. Switzerland is the birthplace of the Red Cross, and it hosts the European headquarters of the UN, the WHO, and the WTO. They effectively turned their strict policy of armed neutrality into a massive global asset for peace-building and diplomacy. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. I want to leave you with this final thought. We live in a world that feels increasingly fractured by ethnic and political identities. But Switzerland proves that cohesion doesn't actually require everyone to be exactly the same. It just requires a shared will to govern together. So, is the Swiss nation of volition a blueprint the rest of the globe should be following? Think about it. Thanks for joining us, and keep questioning the world around you.